Chesterton meows once commandingly. "I'm sorry," says Cathbad, "I can't." Chesterton gives him a pitying look, jumps on the cupboard and manages to slide out through a partially opened window. So that's why he's been on a hunger strike. "Chesterton!" Cathbad lifts the heavy latch and opens the door. Cold air rushes in. "Chesterton, come back!" The cottage is attached to the church, with a passageway through it at ground level, forming a kind of lich gate. Worshippers have to pass underneath the main bedroom in order to get to St. Simeon's. There's even a handy recess in the wall of the passage, so that pallbearers can rest their coffins there. The back door of the cottage opens directly onto the churchyard. "But you won't mind that," said Justin. "It's right up your street." And it's true that Cathbad does like burial grounds and all places of communal worship. But even so, there's something about St. Simeon's Cottage, Walsingham, that he doesn't quite like. It's not the presence of the cat or the creaks and groans of the old house at night. It's more a kind of sadness about the place, a feeling so oppressive that during the first evening, Cathbad was compelled to call upon a circle of protection and to ring his partner Judy several times. He's not scared now, just worried about the cat. He walks along the church path, the frost crunching under his feet, calling the animal's name. And then he sees it. A tombstone near the far wall, glowing white in the moonlight, and a woman standing beside it. A woman in white robes and a flowing blue cloak. As Cathbad approaches, she looks at him, and her face, illuminated by something stronger than natural light, seems at once so beautiful and so sad that Cathbad crosses himself. "Can I help you?" he calls. His voice echoes against stone and darkness. The woman smiles, such a sad, sweet smile, shakes her head and starts to walk away, moving very fast through the gravestones towards the far gate. Cathbad goes to follow her, but is floored, neatly and completely, by Chesterton, who must have been lurking behind a yew tree for this very purpose. Well, it's the 8th fib in the Ruth Galloway murder mysteries, and this starts with Cathbad, Ruth's druid friend, house-sitting in Walsingham. And Walsingham's a little, I'm sure lots of people know it, a little town in Norfolk that's famous for visions of the Virgin Mary, and there have been visions there since the 11th century. And Cathbad, of course, is house-sitting, and when he sees a woman in white with a blue dress, with a blue cloak in the graveyard, he thinks he's seen the Virgin Mary. But actually, the next day, a woman's body is found in nearby fields, and it's a patient at a nearby drug clinic. And so Nelson and the team are brought into a murder inquiry. And meanwhile, Ruth, who's got an old friend from university staying, who turns out, much to her surprise, to have become a woman priest, is then drawn into a campaign against these women priests. And when they start dying off, it's clear that something very unholy is happening. As soon as I knew that I was going to write about Norfolk, I obviously knew that I would have to do Walsingham, because it's a beautiful place. It's got a ruined abbey. It's full of atmosphere. It's slightly spooky. When I was doing a talk recently in Norfolk, somebody came up to me afterwards and she said that when she drives through Walsingham with her dogs in the back, they howl all the way through the village, and there's something a bit spooky about it. But also, equally, I kind of knew that any book about Walsingham would have to kind of sort of tackle religion in a way. So I think that's probably why I saved it till book 8. But the idea came when I was just doing a sort of research trip to Norfolk and to Walsingham. And I saw a woman priest dressed in purple walking through the grounds. And it struck me as such a statement to make, to be wearing purple like a bishop in a sort of religiously conservative place like that. And of course, the other big influence is The Woman in White by Wilkie Collins, which is my favourite book. So in a way, The Woman in Purple and The Woman in White came together to form The Woman in Blue. If white and purple do make blue, which they probably don't. I always do quite a lot of research, and as I was saying earlier on, I'd been to Walsingham, and Ruth's an archaeologist, so I'd spoken to archaeologists who'd found various relics there, and there are some really interesting, like so pilgrim badges, they were called, and one of the things that also fascinated me was these kind of a bit weird relics, like containers for the Virgin's breast milk and things like that, which was apparently on the altar at Walsingham. So those things really fascinated me. But I suppose one of the most interesting things I did to research was actually did go on a pilgrimage. And I was a bit worried about it in a way, because I knew that I would be participating in something that was a genuine sort of faith experience for research purposes. So I decided to be very upfront with the priest who was leading it. It was called Father Kevin, and I explained that to him. And do you know, I needn't have worried because I've never had a better research assistant. And we could be in a church and there'd be candles lit and everything. And, you know, everyone very quiet, very, very reverent. And Father Kevin would be shouting across the church, Elly, do you think you could kill somebody with a thurible? Which is the thing they do incense with. So I needn't have worried. Father Kevin is acknowledged in the book and he was fabulous. So was it challenging to explore women's role in religion? Yes, it was. It is something I'm pretty interested in. I've got a good friend from university who was brought up a Catholic, and his wife is a woman priest. And she helped me quite a lot, you know, to look at sort of the role of women priests. She didn't want to be acknowledged, so I won't say her name. And it is very interesting. And also, it was the central sort of conundrum, I guess, of the book, that Walsingham is a place that's dedicated to worshipping a woman. Yet there are some very misogynistic ideas that come along with that sometimes. And some of the rhetoric against women priests is absolutely horrible. But I wanted to kind of, I suppose in all my books, even though I love the woman in white and the woman in black, I'm more interested in grey, you know. So I really wanted to look at all those ideas, you know, the people who are traditional Catholics and the women priests who feel they have a role in the church, and Cathbad's druidical ideas, and all of them. I wanted them all to be in there. My books are all set around Norfolk, and one reason is it's just a place I love and it's a place I know quite well. But my heroine, Dr. Ruth Galloway, is an archaeologist, and if you are going to write about archaeology, there's nowhere better than Norfolk, because it's been occupied for thousands of years. You know, only 10,000 years ago, it was part of Scandinavia. So on that basis, I think I'm a Scandi crime author. Elly Griffiths here, maybe. But there are relics everywhere. And sometimes, you know, I think all crime writers who write a long-running series start to worry that it's going to be a bit Midsummer Murders, you know, like when one beautiful part of the country is kind of unfeasibly full of bodies. But the truth is, Norfolk is full of bodies, you know. It's just that they've been buried for thousands of years. So you're never short of a body in Norfolk. In some ways, I think Ruth hasn't changed in her essence. You know, she's a very strong woman in many ways. She's an expert in her field, but she's also quite reclusive and quite shy. And I don't think those have essentially changed. But of course, her circumstances have changed a lot. And one of the big changes is that she becomes a mother during the series. And you know, anyone who becomes a parent knows that does change you. So that has really changed her. And I think it was a role she never thought she'd have, but one she has. And the one that she worries about, but one that she's also, you know, really, really enjoyed. So, and also her relationship with DCI Harry Nelson has become incredibly complicated. And I've just finished writing book 9, and it's even more complicated now. So I don't know what I'm going to do. I mean, the one silly thing that I regret a lot is in book 1, I said that Ruth never wore jeans. Don't know why I said that. And now I really regret that, because it's such good shorthand if you want to say a character's not dressed up, you'd say, oh, she's wearing jeans. So I think I'm going to have to say Ruth now wears jeans, because I'm fed up with that restriction. But other than that, I don't think she's changed that much. Do I know what the future holds for Ruth? Well, I have an idea. I mean, as I was saying, it's a very complicated relationship with Ruth and Nelson and Nelson's wife, Michelle. And it gets more complicated. And I guess the fact that I don't think is a bad thing, because you don't know in life, do you? And you don't know, and it's organic, and it does change as it goes along. But as I say, I've just finished writing book 9, which will be out next year, and that's called The Chalk Pit. And I've always sort of thought that there would be at least 10, and I think by book 10, there will be some sort of resolution, but I haven't entirely worked out what. I do love writing about Ruth. I mean, when I first had the idea for the books, and I've said this loads of times, you know, I was walking across Titchwell Marsh, and it was as if Ruth sort of came out of the mist towards me, fully formed. That's never happened to me with a character before or since, and I just felt I knew everything about her. And before I start each new book, I do always think to myself, you know, will I still be able to kind of do Ruth, you know, do her voice? But I always somehow can, and I do really love being in her, you know, her company. I like the research. And I like finding out about new archaeological things for every book. But actually, what I really like is when I'm into the book and the plot is running, and it's just quite exciting for me to write as well. So that's my favourite bit. It's actual writing.